Today is August 2nd, 2017. This is your Lake of the Ozarks fishing report for the upper Osage area of Lake of the Ozarks. And this report is courtesy of Joe's Lake Ozark Guide Service. We're sitting here in August. We've just come off a really bad heat spell where we had heat indexes well over 100. Water temperatures went up. I personally didn't even get on the water much during that time. Just don't like being on the water when you just bake and fry like that. But we've had some cool nights come through, cool temperatures, so it's really kind of turned on and picked up the fishing here in the upper lake area. The lake level is about 659, between 659.0 and 659.5. So the lake's still pretty full where it needs to be this time of year. Watercolor pretty clear for the upper Osage actually. It's clearer as you get down more towards the Hurricane Lake Bridge, and as you get farther up around like say Buffalo Creeks and those areas and farther up, the water is going to get a lot muddier. But the water seems to be clearer in the creeks than it does out on the main lake. But the watercolor is a really good color, and the shad are really active right now. And right now in the upper Osage, fish are biting pretty good actually. They're shallow and they're biting pretty aggressively. 2-3 main patterns that are working right now. You can still do a deep pattern here, although that pattern with this cold front that's coming through, the shad are leaving, moving to the back of the creeks and the flats. That deeper pattern's kind of going away, but you can still catch fish on the deep ledges and the deep drop-offs. You can use real heavy jigs to do that. The big worms, it's a 10-inch power worm. That's what that is. Berkeley makes that a very, very good worm. You can throw that out on those deep ledges. Also in those deeper brush piles, the jigs and the worm works really good. You can also throw deep diving crankbaits. This is a, if I can get it unhooked here, this is the Strike King 6XD. So it's going to go 15, 18 feet of water, that deep. So it's a really good hunt and search bait. That's what that is. Swim bait's another good choice that you can throw out on those deep ledges and stuff. But like I said, because the current has been reduced out on the main lake, that pattern is not near as strong as it was earlier in the summer, like back in June, when the lake was high and they were trying to get the lake back down to normal levels that they were having. So that's one pattern you can do. You can go out and fish those deep ledges. You know, bluff ends are always good on those deep ledges. You know, throw your jigs and worms. You can throw topwaters early in the morning, low light conditions for those. And then when you go from the deep ledges, another pattern that's working right now, and it's working actually really good right now because there's a lot of shad in the back of the creeks, is the flat areas, or the flat, not in the channel of the back of the creeks, but off to the sides in those flat areas on those docks. When the sun's out, these fish get up underneath those docks, and you can go in and pitch and flip all the little openings and crevices and dark spots in those docks, and a lot of fish are hanging out there. I went out this morning, probably before 10 o'clock. We probably had 11 keepers. You know, not any really big fish, but our best 5 fish probably went around 14 to 16 pounds. So that was a pretty good morning, just pitching the back of the creeks. Lures you can use in the back of the creeks, you can always throw a jig. And when I'm going to talk lures, there's no magic lure you can use. Use your favorite lure that you can feel comfortable pitching with, because the key is getting the bait where the fish are sitting. Because if you miss your target and you throw it 6 inches to a foot off your target, those fish are really not going to come out and chase that. You really got to put it where they're at, because they're just hanging out underneath these docks, waiting to go out and feed on shad. And they're kind of in a neutral state, so they're just kind of sitting there hanging out, waiting for maybe low light conditions. Maybe they're feeding at night, but they're just kind of hanging out. So you got to pitch that lure into those little spots where those fish are laying. So if you're a jig fisherman, you'd like to pitch a jig, that's a good thing to pitch. If you're more into pitching plastics, a brush hog is a great lure to pitch. And one of the things I do with my brush hog is, because there's still a bluegill spawn going on here around the full moons, and that'll probably continue here throughout the summer. And if you really get a good look at the bluegill here on this lake, the tails kind of have a chartreuse or a lighter tint to them than the rest of their body has. So I just kind of take a little dip or dye or a marker, and I just kind of color the tails of the brush hog chartreuse. That way, you know, these bass, if they're feeding on bluegill, they'll hit those as well. But the brush hog's a great tool, great lure to use, whether you're fishing in brush piles, whether you're fishing on rocky points, whether you're pitching these docks. That's just a great all-around lure to use. If you like to combine plastics with the jig, the D-bomb with the gator lock jig head is a good choice. The D-bomb is made by Missile. It's a beaver style bait. I know this one's got one flapper on it. I guess they pulled the other flapper off. But this is another bait that's really good to use. As you pitch this thing, it'll kind of glide, as you can swim this thing along just below the dock foam. But that's another good lure to choose. A lot of guys like to pitch on a shaky head, just a trick worm. That's really good when the conditions get high and bright and you need more of a finesse application. Or if there's two of you fishing in the boat, like we've got the BFL tournament coming up here, the FLW thing in September. If you're a non-boater and the guy in the front of the boat, he's pitching that big old heavy jig or that brush hog, then maybe come behind him with something just a little bit more subtle, not as active. The zoom trick worm on a shaky head type thing is a good thing to throw. Like I said, get your favorite lure you like to pitch with, and the key to it is not necessarily the lure you have in your hand, it's where you're putting that lure. So you want to look for any of the darkest, shadiest spots as you can on that dock. When I go around and hit those docks, I hit every hole and crevice I can see. That's what I do. That way I know I've got the dock covered, and I fish it pretty fast, and then I move on to the next dock. So that's another pattern that's working right now, back of the creek patterns. Early in the morning, the back of the creek pattern is another good thing you can use. Also bluff ends, topwater bite's pretty good on that. Of course, buzzbait's a good choice. I use the buzzbait as a good search lure. It's also a good target lure if you see a specific log or something you want to throw at it. That's pretty good bait to use. Get your favorite topwater lure. I had some success this morning throwing a whopper plopper. And I was throwing actually the smaller version. I think this is the 90. This is the smaller one, but this one looks like a gizzard shad. That's what it looks like. And one of the things I've noticed is that there are threadfin shad and gizzard shad both mixed in together in the back of these creeks, and also in these flat areas of these main lake pockets right now. So, but that plopper is just a good all-around bait to use. A little bit more expensive than the other topwater lures, but it's a fish catching bait. And one of the things I've noticed about the whopper plopper is the strikes you seem to get on it seem to be a lot more violent for some reason. They don't really just come up and suck it down like they might do a popar or even a spook. They actually hammer it and try to kill it on a whopper plopper. Popars, there are spooks. Again, throw your favorite topwater bait, and in these low light conditions and on these bluff ends, and you should have some success. Main lake flats are going to get good. They're not there right yet. There's a little bit of shad on the main lake flats, but there's really not. I tried a couple of my pretty good flats. I usually tried those this morning. Didn't even get a bite on those, so that still probably hasn't turned on yet. I don't think those main lake fish have committed out into those areas, whereas the back of the creek fish, I think they've kind of been there all summer, and now they're just getting more active because the water's cooled down and their food supply is closer to them because they're in the back of the creeks. And then if you're just looking for some fun fishing to go out and do, maybe you want to take the kids, maybe you're someone who's a beginner and you just want to catch fish. On these main lake docks where there's wind blowing on them, especially on points and bluff ends, the Kentucky or spotted bass will get up underneath those dock corners. If you get on a windy dock corner, you can go along there with a small crankbait, a zoom fluke, just jerk that thing by. I like to pitch because I like to flip and pitch, I like to pitch a tube that has the jig head shoved up inside the tube, and I like to pitch that. And then the reason why I like to pitch that, and it does not have a big heavy weed guard, this jig does it, it just has a little wire weed guard. And the reason why I like it is because you don't have to really set the hook on that so much. The fish will kind of hook themselves because of that light wire weed guard and that light wire hook. So when you get out on some of those deeper docks, you may be sitting in 40, 50 foot of water in that dock, but the bass are suspended right up underneath the dock foam. So it's a great way to take kids go fishing, have them catch some fish, and if you have some people who are just beginners or you just want to go out and have a good time, just try catch numbers. That's a pretty good pattern that you can do. And again, there's a variety of lures you can use. You can use topwater baits out on that pattern too. My suggestion is use a smaller topwater bait. For example, Zara Spook makes the regular size Zara Spook, and then they make a smaller one called the Zara Puppy type. Downsize that bait for those Kentuckies out on the main lake. Every now and then you'll catch a 3-4 pound largemouth on that, but most of the fish you're going to catch are those spotted bass that are anywhere between 10 and 15 inches long. That's usually the size fish you're going to catch out there. So that's kind of what's going on right now at Lake the Ozarks. We got the fall pattern coming up. The fish right now, the way they're biting in the back of the creeks, they're kind of biting like a fall pattern. Things happen sooner. They happen first up the lake before they happen down the lake. It just seems that's the way things have worked. So if you really want to learn how to pitch or flip docks, fall's a great time to do it. And if you don't know how to do it, give me a call, hire me, even if it's for a half-a-day trip. I'll teach you and show you how to flip and pitch. And then I think you'll enjoy going out and learn how to catch some of those fish, whether you're going for the largemouth in the back of the creeks or whether you're going to try to flip a little tube or something like that along these bluff docks. Just learning how to flip and pitch is just going to make you a better fisherman, because you'll be able to put your lure into those hard to reach spots where those fish hide. So thanks for watching. Thanks for all the support you give us. Thanks to Bassing Bob for putting my videos on. If you're not a subscriber to Bassing Bob, you might want to consider doing that, especially if you're going to fish Lake the Ozarks. Great resource for this lake. Good luck in your fishing. Take care.